And media freedoms groups are raising the alarm over the 17 new charges filed against Julian Assange by the U.S. DOJ. Activists say this sets a dangerous precedent where a journalist can be criminally prosecuted for publishing truthful information, with some going as far as to claim the U.S. has declared war on journalism. For more on this, we're being joined now by longtime professor of journalism, Lyle Slack. And full disclosure, Professor Slack was my very own journalism professor many, many moons ago. Professor Slack, as always, good to see you. So last night,
Thank you.
Last night, the DOJ presented 17 new indictments on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. These are in addition to the initial charge of computer intrusion. This brings the total indictment count now to 18. And what struck me was how the DOJ, their statement, framed some of these charges. We're going to pull them up for you. For example, Assange and WikiLeaks actively solicited United States classified information, including by publishing a list of, quote, most wanted leaks that sought, among other things, classified documents. Another point here, obtained from Manning and aided and abetted her in obtaining classified information with reason to believe that the information was to be used to the injury of the United States or the advantage of a foreign nation. So question here, Professor Slack. For example, the first charge on Assange there, soliciting for leaks, putting out a most wanted leaks request. How is that any different than when a reporter solicits on their own Facebook or social media, like Twitter, for leads or other story ideas? Is that any different?
It's a public relations effort on the part of the Department of Justice. They're trying to make the American public believe that we're dealing with espionage here, not with journalism. So you're right. It's not any different than the New York Times or the Guardian in England. What they do all the time, they're seeking whistleblowers who have access to facts about deceptive government practices. And that's what any journalist would be interested in.
So the second one, the DOJ says that the information obtained from Manning was, quote, was used to injure the U.S. or for the advantage of a foreign nation. Isn't that kind of a broad accusation? Couldn't the DOJ, if they so wished, take any investigative piece about the government that made them look bad and slap the same charge on any Joe Schmo reporter? Isn't this kind of a dangerous precedent?
Two things, Manila. One, they make this accusation that the information was stolen to harm the United States and aid a foreign nation. They don't say what foreign nation that was. You would think if that was actually a fact that they would include that in the indictment. They didn't. Secondly, this is all part of a rhetorical effort to portray Assange not as a journalist or publisher, but as a spy. And that's why he's being charged under the Espionage Act, as Bradley Manning was. So this is part of the Trump administration effort to do an end run around issues that were decided, Manila, 50 years ago in the Pentagon Papers cases. They had the same issues that they were dealing with then, where I'm just going to quote some of the
Sure,
decisions
please.
that were made. This may sound like ancient history to people, but it is the law of the land yet. And what the DOJ currently is doing is tactically smart, because they realize they can't allow this case to proceed as a case about freedom of the press. It's about spying. And so they're trying to argue that Julian Assange is a spy, not a publisher. And so what they use the same kind of language. In the Pentagon Papers case, they claim that the publication of the Pentagon Papers by the New York Times quote, risk serious harm to the United States national security. Exactly the same argument that we're getting now. The Supreme Court decided in the Pentagon Papers, Justice Brennan wrote, for instance, that the government claims of what could or might or may prejudice national security were not a sufficient excuse to ban publication. So we've got another case here where there's potential. The government is saying there's potential for harm, but they can't actually cite harm. Justice Black, in his opinion, reminded the court of what why Thomas Jefferson insisted on the inclusion of the freedom of the press First Amendment in the Constitution. And his his reason was, quote, so that it can bear the secrets of government and inform the people. Only a free and unrestrained press can effectively expose deception in government.
Right.
That's what we're dealing with here. A government that does not like to have its lies and secrets exposed so that the American people can know what is going on.
And journalism is supposed to be the fourth estate, as I recall you teaching us many years ago. But the DOJ does raise one important point, Professor. The fact that Assange published all these documents in full without redaction of names or locations, does that pose a threat then to those individuals in situations like this? Should Assange have perhaps taken greater care to protect those identities like other responsible editors of any other newspaper would do?
Sure, yes. He could have been more responsible about that. But two things again. The government can't cite the name of any person or entity that was harmed by what WikiLeaks and Bradley Manning revealed, was it 9, 10 years ago now. So they can make that accusation, but as I just read you from the Supreme Court decision in 1971, the damage that might happen or may or possibly is not sufficient evidence to prevent publication. But secondly, it doesn't undermine the fact that Julian Assange is a publisher. He may be a more negligent publisher than we would like, not as careful as we'd like, but he is still a publisher. You know, this is all part of, you know, the government has put journalists in this position because they have taken evidence of their war crimes and lies to the public and classified them as top secret documents. So then when a journalist uncovers these lies and war crimes and publishes it, the government can claim that this is a spy operation and not a journalism operation. So it's the government has put journalists in this impossible position of defending themselves against stealing secret documents.
Right, and I'm sure, in your opinion, with today's, allegations of fake news and what have you, everything that Julian Assange has published has been true. Not everything is factual, and there has been no opinion coming from Assange. He just publishes them, and now the government is pursuing him, unlike anyone we've ever seen in U.S. history in the past, among which they've tried, like James Risen, whistleblowers like Jeffrey Sterling and the like. Unfortunately, we got to leave it right there, Professor Slack. As always, greatly appreciate your expertise in this field. Journalism professor Lyle Slack, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.